Oh, do you have?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the State Election Board on June 20th, 2023. I will say I came up here and in my place were some papers, the first of which was entitled Tax Incentive Review Panel. And I know that this is a dynamic process and things are happening that are added to our agenda all the time, but I had not heard about the Tax Incentive Review Panel, which I've been told has nothing to do with me. So we will start with the order of business today. We will begin with an invocation given by Mr. Mashburn.
Go with me, please. Heavenly Father, we praise your name and worship your holiness. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage. Bless those in attendance as we work together to achieve benefits for the citizens of Georgia. Amen.
Amen. And Sarah, if you will lead us in the pledge, please.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First order of business is I need a motion to approve the State Election Board meeting on agenda and minutes for February 7th of 2023. Is there such a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the State Election Board meeting agenda and report for February 7th, 2023 be approved. Is there any discussion? There isn't any, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The decision is unanimous. Let's turn to, and there's one administrative thing that I wanted to announce about tomorrow, which is, you can either consider it a separate meeting or a continuation of today's meeting, but tomorrow, after we consider the petitions that have been filed, I have asked the Secretary of State's office and its the people that are most knowledgeable about this to do something which I need. And based upon emails that I've received over the past several days, I think it's something that everybody needs. There's been this referral generally to concern about the update to the Dominion Systems machines being held off until 2025. That's a decision that was made by the Secretary of State. As I've gotten questions about that, I realized one thing: I did not know what exactly the update was. I didn't know what it did. I didn't know what it addressed. Everybody just refers to it as the update. And so I have asked the Secretary of State's office to give a briefing tomorrow after the first item of business, which relates to the petitions, so that all of us will, and many of us for the first time, certainly me, understand what the update is intended to address, what it does address, why it addresses it, and that I've asked for it to be an objective, factual presentation so that we will all understand what the update is and what it seeks to accomplish. The Secretary of State's office, through Blake Evans and Charlene McGowan, have agreed to do that, so we will do that tomorrow. And I would ask all of those that are interested, even if you're not here, to tune in, because I think it will be the first time that we've gotten that explanation. My understanding is that the Secretary of State sent out a letter yesterday. I don't know whether that was for public consumption or whether that just went to people that are in the elections process at the counties. I also know that at 3:30 today, or at least I've been told, that he is having a Zoom call with all the election officials in the counties to answer questions about the update, all of which I think is good, because because I think that is something that we all need to know as we consider our respective positions on the update. So that's the other administrative announcement, with one final exception. I this morning granted a postponement of case number 2022-205, Fulton County vote buying, which is in the section of the agenda regarding violation cases recommended for letters of instruction or referral to the Attorney General's office. The Secretary of State's office and the State Attorney General's office have asked for time to consider the representation of the respondent in that case and whether or not there is or is not a conflict, and I have granted the postponement, so that will not be heard today. So with that, I want to turn to the matter of the Fulton County Performance Review Report. This has a longer history than I do on the board, but it has a history that is long. These are matters that were brought up and required upon the request of the Fulton County delegation to do a performance review of the conduct and performance of the Fulton County Elections Board following the 2020 election. We have received the performance review report that was issued by Mr. Germany, Mr. Day, and Mr. Kittle. That is on the website for those of you that wanted to read that. There was a response by the county that we received and have considered. At the county's request, knowing that we were going to have a hearing, they asked for the board members to forecast to them any questions that they had, and we submitted those to Fulton County, to which they have now responded. So we have a number of different facts and arguments that have been presented to us, some opinions expressed in the Fulton County on the Performance Review Board by the members of the review board. And today is a chance for Fulton County, if they want to add something further to the record that they have submitted to us, they can. And I've asked Mr. Tyler, who represents the Fulton County Board, to be present to answer questions that board members might have. And I've also asked for members of the board to be here, and for one member, the executive director of the staff, to be here. And so thank you, Ms. Bullard, for being here. Thank you. I know that you probably don't want to be here, but you are. Ms. Williams, and the chair, I guess chair appointed elect, who will become the chair of the board, I guess on July 1st, is that right? And that's Ms. Perkins Hooker. So thank you for being with us. And so at this point, I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Tyler.
Thank you very much, Judge Duffy, members of the State Election Board.
And do you have a microphone in front of you? Is there a number at your seat? Are you seat 6? Let's pretend.
Now I think it's on.
There we go. Thank you.
Good morning, Judge Duffy, members of the State Election Board. My name is Michael Tyler. I'm with the law firm of Kilpatrick Townsend. Along with my law partner, Ron Rader, we're here to represent the Fulton County Board of Registration and
You
Elections.
might want to hold that down.
We have with us, as the judge indicated, Kathy Woolard, who is the current chair of the BRE. We also have Nadine Williams, who is the executive director of the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections, and Patrice Perkins Hooker, who as of July 1 will become the new chair of the BRE. I will say briefly, we have been very pleased at the engagement that Fulton County's BRE has had with the Performance Review Board appointed by the SEB. That appointment was made back in August of 2021. The BRP actually had a year-and-a-half investigation, a very thorough investigation. They engaged with the county collaboratively. They issued their report back on January 13th, a very comprehensive report. We then, as the Fulton County BRE, submitted our response on May 23rd. We were pleased to be allowed to do that. We attended the hearing on February 7th. We certainly were pleased at the engagement of this board with the Performance Review Board. All the questions that were asked then, it was our hope and our expectation that the board would resolve the matter at that particular time. The board, however, asked us to give our report, our response to the report, which again we did on May 23rd. We followed up when we were asked to come before this board at the next meeting. We did in fact ask for an opportunity to respond to any questions that any of you might have. We were pleased to receive your written questions in advance, and we did disseminate our responses there too. So we are very pleased at the level of engagement. This has been a very long-standing process, one that has gone on, as I said, for over a year and a half. We certainly are confident that this board at this point, having received a very favorable report from the Performance Review Board, we are hopeful, we have every expectation that based upon that comprehensive report, based upon the response that we have provided, both in terms of the response on May 23rd, as well as the response to all the questions that you had of us, and based upon the additional responses that we are totally prepared to give you today, it is our hope, it is our expectation that this board will see fit to follow the recommendation of your very own Performance Review Board, which found, as you know, that Fulton County's Board of Registration and Elections has made significant progress over the course of the past 2 years, and that it is fully engaged in driving those improvements that have been demonstrated, and that in fact it would be detrimental to remove that board. So it is our hope, it is our expectation that this board will now see fit to adopt that recommendation, to adopt that report, to adopt what we believe is the only fair, the only right thing to do, and that is to close out this case. We are totally committed. We have demonstrated the improvement. We have put in place mechanisms, infrastructure to sustain that improvement, and we intend to do so. So at this point, I wanted to say, Your Honor, Judge Duffy, what we would like to do is to basically have the questions that any member has. Primarily, Ms. Woolard in her capacity, as well as Ms. Williams in her capacity, are the ones who have the most knowledge about the processes, the historical context, as well as the future plans and the current plans of the Fulton County BRE. So we'll entertain any and every question. What we'd like to do, though, is to begin with an opening statement, very, very brief, by Ms. Woolard. I'll disseminate a written version of this, but we'll turn it over to her. And then any questions that any of you have, Your Honor, we would then entertain and allow the person who has the greatest knowledge to provide the answer, if that works for this board. Again, we're pleased and privileged to be here.
Thank you.
I'll turn it over to Ms. Woolard.
Do you have a separate microphone? Thank you.
Yeah. It's on.
Is
Thank
it
you.
on? Okay.
Great. Well, thank you. I'll be brief because we submitted a rather lengthy statement in response. But I just wanted to thank you, Chairman Duffy, and members of the board for inviting me to speak today and allowing me to be a part of this. As chair of the, I'm going to read a little bit. Normally, I'm a more extemporaneous speaker, but we want to make sure for the record that we make a couple of points. I'm here on behalf of the full board. The full board has been apprised along the way of our communication with you and my posture here. As you know, Ms. Williams is here, who is our director, and my successor is here as well, Patrice Perkins-Hooker, who will become chair. I want to thank Ryan Germany, Stephen Day, and Ricky Kittles for the time and effort of the Performance Review Board. We really appreciate the time that they put in, particularly Stephen Day and Ricky Kittles as volunteers who put in as many hours as we did into this, but no slouch on Mr. Germany, who put plenty of his own time. They reviewed the procedures and processes of the department and observed polling locations and election center operations during the complete 21 and 22 cycles. That's 9 separate elections during that time. I want to thank the Carter Center for its report. We were asked by the Performance Review Board if we would be amenable to having the Carter Center observe, and to that, of course, in keeping with our posture of cooperating in everything, we were happy to invite them to do that. Their report and observations during 2022 were very helpful, and then Seven Hills Strategy for its observations of the 2020 general election and runoff election. In all of the reviews, in all of the elections in which we all participated, none of the reviews and reports found any violations of the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections or the Board of Registration and Elections. We look forward to ending the process today. We feel like we've made significant progress over time since the performance review was appointed nearly 2 years ago in August 2021. We've participated in multiple meetings, submitted tons of documents, facilitated many inspections, and have been open and transparent about our plans and our performance. And I'll take a little bit of liberty to say I want to thank the members of the board. We have a bipartisan board, and I think, I've been in politics for a long time, and I've sort of been proud of, I think, a record of being bipartisan and fair. And what is probably my happiest achievement about this board is that we have been unanimous on virtually every decision. I think in 2 years, possibly there have been 2 or 3 votes where somebody felt like they had to vote differently. That's a significant achievement in a time of partisan discord, and I think it's one of the things that has led us to make so much progress over the 2 years. As I mentioned, the Performance Review Board did not cite any violations during the last 2 elections, but we continue to address any concerns anyone might raise and to try to answer questions that anyone might have. But those concerns don't constitute any violations of the election code. Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you all again for the opportunity to speak. We welcome any further questions and look forward to seeing a vote to end the matter today. Thank you.
Before we open it to questions, I want to frame the discussion. Everybody is entitled to characterize what the report says. And I understand your characterization, and I appreciate it, and there is certainly text in the report that supports that. What I want to note is this, and does somebody have some water for me? Not that, because somebody's been drinking out of that already. Is this, that a fair reading of this report does not say that there are no problems and that there were no problems. A fair reading of this report is that there were significant problems causing a significant change in staff. We now have a change in the leadership of the board. There's an open position on the board, so this anonymity that has been on the board, we don't know whether or not that will continue because it's different. You have gone through a number of election cycles, but you will not have encountered an election cycle like you will in 2024. The election cycle in 2024, my prediction is, will be just what happened in 2020, or at least it has the potential for that. So my concern is between now and 2024, what about the other comments within the report that say that there have been significant changes, mainly, I think, to overcome the systemic problems and the cultural problems that occurred in 2020? But there are, at least in the conclusions and recommendations, the following statements. Training processes and procedures and overall organization have been improved as well, but the first part is what you cite, I'll cite the second part, but those things need further improvement to ensure readiness and success in the 2024 election. And that's the opinion of somebody who's been involved in the actual election process for years. Second, the county's manager office in Fulton County has continued to be involved in planning, strategizing, and preparing for upcoming elections, which has positively contributed to the improved execution of elections. Third, director level staff and the Fulton County Board of Elections needs to ensure that staff has the necessary tools and guidance to ensure best practices and compliance. Next, the existence of the performance review helped incentivize Fulton County to make improvements to their elections, which doesn't surprise me that when under scrutiny that people do in fact change. But it took an enormous amount of donated work, and it's difficult to see how it is a sustainable process that can continue to positively influence election administration in Georgia without some reforms. A positive, proactive, and periodic review process, appropriately funded, designed to support and assist all counties with election improvements, could be more effective than the performance review process in its current iteration. That is a statement, and I think an opinion of the members of the panel, that there isn't in place a system by which Fulton County and other counties that have problems can sustain their performance or improve their performance, going back to the first comment, which is that there has to be an assurance of readiness and success in the 2024 election. And then finally, while the Performance Review Board has seen improvement in Fulton County elections since the 2020 election, further improvement is still needed to ensure readiness for the 2024 presidential election cycle. Presidential election cycles see more voters than midterms, and that was, and we know the midterms, while I think it's fair to say that because of the result, there was less controversy and less complaints about it. When you have a close result like 2020, the circumstances and the ability to contend with those and reach the highest level of readiness and preparation are necessary. Georgia will be a competitive state in next year's elections, so election preparation needs to recognize that Fulton County's actions, in all counties for that matter, will be heavily scrutinized by political parties, campaigns, candidates, and activist groups. To ensure successful execution of the 2024 election, Fulton County should continue the improvements it has already embarked on and prioritize the areas for improvement noted in this report. So I think that the issue for me personally is what can be put in place that meets the requirement and the opinion of the panel that there has to be something in place to ensure that the corrections that were made from the performance in the 2020 election, the improvements that have been put in place in order to achieve that the further improvements that the people in this report who had no axe to bear with anybody, I think their sole intent was to try to help us and to help those people that are reviewing their report to find a way in which what has happened, the improvement process, is sustained, and that we are prepared for what they predict will be a very difficult election in 2024. So that's what I want to frame. I'll have some more comments and some ideas on how to do that. But I think a lot of it is, for me, will be, what would your response be to come up with a means to ensure that the improvements that are made can be sustained? And I will say, Stephen Day, after this work was all done, when I thought he would say, I'm done, I've contributed my hundreds of hours to do this, but was concerned enough to express to me, he said, how might we do this better? And what we are looking for, at least what I'm looking for, we'll hear from the other members in a second, but what I am looking for is a process to ensure that the progress that was made would be continued, that those additional things that need to be put into place, and to help, in fact, new people on the board, including its new leadership, to do that. To Ms. Perkins Hooker, let me tell you this. I know you're a lawyer, and you served as a lawyer to the board. I was a lawyer until I got into this job. I'm still a lawyer, but this is totally different than anything I've experienced in my professional life. And I think to some extent you need somebody to walk alongside you. I call election directors when I see issues that are percolating, and I call them and talk about what the downside is for the election process and whether or not we can, and I personally can offer them any guidance on what they might do so that they can maintain the integrity of the process. And those have been helpful, fruitful, and satisfying conversations. The question is, are we going to draw a line in the sand, which is, let us go, be done with this, and leave us alone, which is a little bit of what I hear in your comments, Mr. Tyler, or are we going to say it's time to change? It is time to change this process and work, as I've said to lots and lots of election groups around the state. It is time for collaboration and cooperation and to do things differently than we've done them in the past. And I think we're prepared to do that. But before we do, let me let our board members ask whatever additional questions they have, and we'll begin with Ms. Johnston. Oh, well, people can ask questions. I'm going to just go down the road beginning with Dr. Johnston. Mr. Mashburn?
I have no questions.
Ms. Gazelle?
I have no questions.
No questions, or wait for comments?
Just questions now.
Question, no questions.
Okay. Now comments, beginning with Dr. Johnston. So far, I'm only 80% compliant with my duties to make sure that people have their, now I'm only 60% compliant.
All right.
So bear with me as I try to manipulate these speakers.
I think, on. Well, three things. I want to thank the Performance Review Board, the members for serving in this capacity. I'm grateful for their willingness to take on the assignment. And just would like to say, in my world of medicine, a planned or unplanned, yikes, visit by the Joint Commission of Accreditation creates stress and tension, but its goal is to help doctors and hospitals measure, assess, and improve performance in order to provide safe, high-quality care for patients. And I would wish the same for elections. I also want to express my thanks to Mr. Tyler, Ms. Woolard, Ms. Williams for responding to the report and the State Election Board questions. The kind words spoken by Mrs. Germany, Kittle, and Day during their report of the review are encouraging. Since this is a first time for a performance review report that has been requested and performed, just a reminder that the scope as written in the SB 202 legislation describes it as broad, a thorough and complete investigation and evaluation. However, the limitations of the Performance Review Board was made evident, suggesting that issues like funding, focus, and scope need to be addressed. As Ms. Gazal said in August of 21, at the time of the creation of this board, any election office has two goals: to ensure that every eligible voter can access their ballot, cast it by the method of their choosing, and those ballots are counted accurately and transparently in such a way that assures the public that they can have trust in the outcome. I think that's four, not two things, but nevertheless, it's a great assessment, and I appreciate that. I look forward to the discussion and comments of my fellow board members. Thank you.
Mr. Mashburn.
Thank you, Judge Duffy. When the Performance Review Board was created, my comments were, I hope Fulton County takes this opportunity to do better, rather than throw up their hands and just say, well, it's in the hands of the Performance Review Board, and we're going to give up. And I'd like to say that I'm very happy that in this years-long process that Fulton County didn't give up. One of the things the general public does not know is that each of these board members, volunteers, have been going to each of the counties, and one board member to a county, and watching especially tabulation centers. So the board members have put in extraordinary amount of time for each county, and we get pictures sometimes from Ed appearing at 2 in the morning, and he's still counting. So the board members worked very hard on this, and during this process, I was assigned to Fulton County. Now, one of the reasons I was assigned to Fulton County was because as a poll watcher, I had watched Fulton County for maybe as long as 20 years, every election. And so one of the things that I saw is remarkable change and improvement during the process. And so for that, I extend hearty appreciation and congratulations to Kathy Woolard for all her hard work. Now, one of the things that Fulton County has always dealt with, and I had friends on the board of Fulton County elections, and while we're down at the tabulation center, we'll talk, and I'll say, what are y'all doing about this? And there's like, they won't listen to us. And this was a board member. So to hear the report today that the board is now moving unanimously is a substantial improvement and a remarkable improvement. I think the process has been very good and thorough, and everybody took their time. There was a lot of talking on the television and on the internet that this was a rash power play to take over Fulton County on a partisan basis. And I think everybody involved in this process proved that they were dedicated to making the experience of the voter and the results being trustworthy as their primary goal. So I think everybody acted toward that goal, and I think the talking heads were wrong. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my fellow board members for their comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mashburn. Ms. Gazelle?
Briefly, I just want to thank everyone who has been a part of this process. The members of the review board, including Mr. Germany, Mr. Kittle, and Mr. Day, and certainly everybody involved in Fulton County, starting with Ms. Woolard and everyone else. Ms. Williams has been laboring for 2 years under what has basically been a sword of Damocles. Not knowing what this process would look like, how it would end. I'm exceedingly grateful for all of the work that everyone has put into this. And Ms. Perkins Hooker, I believe that you have the great good fortune of inheriting a much improved body and a much improved, with a great deal more confidence in it. It's been an enormous amount of work. I hope that if there are legislators or legislative staff who are watching or taking note of this, that they understand a 2-year process is really not sustainable. We do need something else. Now, while the focus has been so much on Fulton County, because let's face it, it's the biggest, most important, most prominent county in the state, I think we could probably have similar reports on 158 other counties. And I want to keep that in mind, that as we talk about improvements, these are writ large. It's not just one county that has had problems. We had unique circumstances in 2020. We'll have other unique circumstances in 2024. I hope that counties are preparing for the fact that they may have to do another redistricting between now and then, and that takes enormous resources. I have no crystal ball, but it's entirely possible. So we've reached a great point now, but we can't let up. We have to continue to keep on top of the processes and make sure that we're constantly improving. And I hope that you will see us as an ally and an advocate, and not just as a quasi-judicial body. We're all here to make sure that the voters of Georgia are served. That's our goal, and I hope that we can work together in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gazelle. Mr. Lindsay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to Mr. Mashburn's comment about my picture, let me tell you why I set the picture. No. It's a good one, because I set the picture of me and the Gwinnett County Election Board to celebrate the fact that among the 4 largest counties in the state, Gwinnett County finished first. But I don't live in Gwinnett, I live in Fulton, so next time out, I want to see Fulton come in first, and I want to see y'all beat Gwinnett in terms of the election, counting. That's part of your challenge, Ms. Perkins Hooker. I am a longtime resident. I think I've spent about 80% of my life in Fulton County. So, I am particularly gratified by the report and gratified by the county's cooperation with the investigation, and appreciative of the efforts that was undertaken by everyone involved in the investigation. And I also recognize that Fulton County has a lot of challenges. I mean, it is a county, if I remember correctly, that's over 70 miles long. That is the largest county in the state. And so you're going to have a lot more focus on you than maybe some of the other ones do. And that's a good thing, quite frankly, given the fact that you hold such an important role in any type election, or the tight election. And there will be a tight election, according to everyone who's predicting one in 2024. And overall, the state will have a target on its back. and we need to work with everyone. As y'all hopefully have noticed, this board, underneath the leadership of Chairman Duffy, is much more proactive than perhaps it has been in the past in terms of being collaborative with counties and with, with those that are on the front line, seeking not only to tell you where you went wrong, but to also encourage what can be done to make things better, and to try to be your mouthpiece with either the state election, with either the Secretary of State or with the General Assembly in terms of what needs to be done in terms of making our election process better and more fair. A lot of things, having served in the General Assembly, I can tell you that a lot of things that are in theory look good when laws are being considered. However, in practice, become very difficult. So we want to be that advocate, not only to go after folks who misbehave, but to go after folks who are trying to do the right thing to help them do so. And that's our goal. I have, as the other board members have expressed, been encouraged by the progress that's been made by Chairman Willard. And I know from a long time Ms. Perkins Hooker, and I know that while you're picking up a board that's in a process in Fulton County that's better than the one that Ms. Willard was handed, you are nevertheless going to be facing a lot of challenges, as was expressed by the report that said that certain things need to be done and continue to need to be done to make things even better, particularly as we face the challenges in 2024. So with, those are basically my main points that I want to make, is that, and I recognize the difficulty that the county board members have. I actually served on the Fulton County Election Board in 2002, 2003. No, actually 2003, 2004. So I am aware of the challenges that you face, and I hope that this will open and continue to open a dialogue between this board and the county board, and let us be not only folks who can tell you how to, where you perhaps have done some things wrong, but also y'all tell us how you can do your job better, and let us be your advocate with those various entities that I've discussed earlier. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you. And I thank the board members.